Somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago, one of the most extraordinary events in the history of life on Earth took place. Not a battle, not a hunt, not a conquest. A wolf walked toward a human, and the human didn't run. What happened next changed both species forever and created the only animal on Earth that chose us as its family. This is the story of how wolves became dogs, and how ancient humans, without science or intention, pulled off the greatest act of interspecies friendship the world has ever seen. Here's the first thing that surprises most people about dog domestication. Humans didn't go out and capture wolves. The wolves came to us. Tens of thousands of years ago, ancient human camps were extraordinarily attractive to wolves. Not because of the humans, but because of what humans left behind. Bones, scraps, animal remains from the hunt. Humans were messy, wasteful eaters by predator standards, and their campsites were littered with caloric opportunity. The boldest wolves, the ones least afraid of human proximity, crept closest to the camps and ate best. They survived longer. They reproduced more. And slowly, over generations, the wolf population near human settlements began to self-select for one critical trait: low fear of humans. This is called self-domestication. And it's the most important thing to understand about how dogs came to exist. Ancient humans didn't have a plan. They weren't running a breeding program. The wolves were making the first move, drawn by food and driven by evolutionary pressure toward the animals that provided it. The least fearful wolf pups, born with slightly calmer temperaments, slightly more tolerance for human proximity, were the ones that got close enough to eat and lived to have pups of their own. Generation by generation, the wolves near human camps were becoming something new, still wild, still dangerous, but just slightly less afraid. And ancient humans, noticing these calmer creatures at the edge of their fire, began doing what humans always do when they see something that doesn't run from them. They reached out. The tipping point almost certainly wasn't an adult wolf. It was a puppy. Wolf pups are born helpless, round-faced, floppy-eared, and enormous-eyed. They trigger every caregiving instinct the human brain possesses, the same dopamine response, the same oxytocin rush, the same irresistible cute response we explored in our last video. Archaeological evidence suggests that ancient humans regularly picked up wolf pups, from litters whose mothers had been killed in hunts, from pups that wandered too close to camp, from orphaned animals found in the wild. And those pups, raised from earliest infancy around humans, bonded to them the way wolf pups naturally bond to their pack, except now, the pack was human. A 2015 archaeological discovery in a 14,000-year-old burial site in Germany found a man, a woman, and two dogs buried together with clear signs of intentional placement. The dogs had been sick earlier in their lives and had been cared for. Someone had nursed those animals through illness. Someone had been attached enough to bury them alongside their human family. This is the moment that separates dog domestication from every other animal we've domesticated. We didn't tame dogs for utility first. We loved them first. The puppy was the bridge. Its helplessness triggered human nurturing. Human nurturing created attachment. Attachment created protection, feeding, and shelter. And the pup that grew up inside the human circle became something the wild wolf never was. An animal that looked to human faces for guidance, comfort, and belonging. The wolf pup didn't join a pack. It became family. Here's where the story gets scientifically breathtaking. As wolves spent more generations around humans, fed by them, sheltered near them, handled from puppyhood, something remarkable began happening at the genetic level. The selective pressure of human proximity wasn't just changing wolf behavior, it was rewriting wolf biology. Scientists studying dog genetics have identified several key mutations that separate dogs from wolves, and most of them cluster around two areas: stress response and social cognition. Dogs have significantly fewer stress hormones than wolves. Their cortisol response, the fight-or-flight chemical that makes wolves dangerous when approached, is dramatically reduced. They literally feel less fear and less aggression in the presence of humans. But more astonishing is what happened to their social brain. Dogs developed the ability to read human facial expressions, something wolves cannot do even after being raised by humans. They can follow a human pointing finger to find hidden food, a skill that even chimpanzees, our closest genetic relatives, struggle with. They evolved to make and hold eye contact with humans, something wolves find threatening and avoid. And perhaps most remarkably, dogs grew a new muscle. The levator anguli oculi medialis, a small muscle above the inner eyebrow that wolves don't have, allows dogs to raise their inner brow and create the expression we call puppy dog eyes. That expression mimics the facial structure of a human infant, directly triggering our caregiving response. Dogs didn't just adapt to live with humans, they evolved to communicate with us, to bond with us, to look at us in ways that make us incapable of turning away. Friendship, it turns out, is written in DNA. For decades, scientists debated how long wolf domestication really took. Thousands of years? Tens of thousands? Could it really happen through something as informal as wolves hanging around campsites? Then, in 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev began one of the most remarkable experiments in the history of science and answered the question definitively. Belyaev took wild silver foxes and selectively bred them for a single trait, tameness. Each generation, he selected only the foxes that showed the least fear and aggression toward humans. No other selection criteria. Just, which fox is least afraid of people? The results were staggering. Within just 10 generations, roughly 10 to 15 years, the foxes began behaving like domestic dogs. They wagged their tails. They sought human attention. They whimpered when humans left the room. They made eye contact and held it. Within 20 generations, they were actively running toward researchers, licking their faces, and showing the kind of enthusiastic, human-directed affection we associate entirely with dogs. And physically, without anyone selecting for physical traits, they began to look different. Floppy ears, curly tails, spotted coats, shorter snouts. The same physical changes seen in domestic dogs appeared spontaneously, linked genetically to the tameness traits being selected. What Belyaev proved was revolutionary. Domestication doesn't require thousands of deliberate years. It can happen relatively quickly through the simple pressure of selecting for one thing: the willingness to be near us. Ancient humans didn't need a plan. They just needed to keep feeding the wolves that didn't run. Nature did the rest. We talk about what humans did to wolves, but the deeper story is what dogs did to us. Because the domestication of wolves wasn't just the creation of a new animal. It was the beginning of a partnership that fundamentally reshaped human civilization. Dogs made us better hunters. Working alongside early humans, they tracked prey, cornered animals, and signaled danger, giving human hunters a decisive edge over competing predators and rival groups. Some archaeologists believe that access to dogs may have been a significant factor in why Homo sapiens outcompeted Neanderthals, who had no such partnership. Dogs made us safer. They slept at the edges of camps, alert to sounds and smells human senses couldn't detect. Every village dog that barked at an approaching predator or hostile stranger was buying human survival time. They were our first alarm system, our first security force. Dogs reshaped our social biology. The oxytocin bonding system that developed between humans and dogs, the same hormonal loop that bonds parents to children, expanded the human capacity for cross-species empathy. We became, quite literally, more emotionally open because of dogs, more nurturing, more bonded to the living world around us. And dogs gave us something harder to measure but impossible to overstate: companionship. In a world that was cold, dangerous, and brutally short, the animal that slept at your feet, ran beside you on the hunt, and looked at you with those ancient, trusting eyes was something extraordinary. It was the first time in the history of life on Earth that two entirely different species looked at each other and chose to stay. Not out of need, not out of fear, out of something that, across 40,000 years and every culture on Earth, we have always called the same thing: love.